it's going to work.
I think it is working. Yeah, from what I can see, it is working.
So say again, Colin?
From what I can see, it is working.
Yeah, I think it changed on Zoom to live. Okay. I don't know if you want to record the meeting just on the safe side as well.
Okay.
Lovely. Oh, Laura's here. Yeah, sorry, thank you. Right, welcome everybody. Usual caveats, we're recording and hopefully live streaming this time to YouTube. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Everyone is present.
Everyone's present, yeah. Item 2, declarations of interest and requests for dispensations.
None received.
None received. Anybody? Can't see anybody. Okay. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 30th of March, which you should have all had last week. Assuming you've read them, could I have a proposer, please? Sorry, Councillor McManus and then Councillor Hanlon. All those in favour, please show. And Councillor Miller-Jones. Oh, okay. All right. I assume that's a yes, Laura, I guess. Yeah, I think so. Okay, thank you very much. Right, to note the progress of actions arising from those minutes.
Do you want,
Do you want to put them on the screen for us? Yes, please. So page 147, that is. Going down. Item C2135, there, Colin.
As you know, this was superseded by the government making absolutely clear that although it could, it is not going to change its mind. And the government instead decided to support it in cheerleading terms the legal action by Hertfordshire County Council and others to get a judicial opinion on whether or not the 1972 Act actually precludes remote meetings in any case, as of course the 1972 Act is entirely silent on meeting by video conference. And that judgment, the court case has been heard and we're awaiting the publication of the judgment. There's also, the government has started a consultation on council's experiences of meeting by remote and whether they think it's a good idea or not.
Right, so you, the consultation is basically asking for what's good about having online meetings, basically, isn't it?
Well, what's good and what's bad. So what councils have found is their experience of it. So I simply need guidance on whether the council wishes me to respond to that. Obviously, I think the experience we've had at Haverhill has been generally positive. it's not compulsory. Just because you can remote meeting doesn't mean you do. So it may be there are some meetings that you would prefer to have face to face, but there are other meetings that you think actually remote works rather well.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, shouldn't we be asking the residents? That's who we represent. We've not seen hardly any residents ever appear while we've been doing remote meetings. So I think their voice needs to be heard as well.
Councillor Hanlon?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on that, we do get quite a few on planning meetings, when it's relevant to their area from members of the public. Thank you, Chair.
Just looking at, I can't see Councillors Fox or Miller Jones. If you've got anything, could you put it in the chat if you wanted to say anything, so I can call you. I can't see anyone else. My only thing on Councillor Brown's thing, I think at the best of times we hardly ever get anyone to come to full council meetings anyway, unless there is something on there that's of relevance, as Councillor Hanlon just said about planning. That's my view. I personally think they've worked really well. May not be so relevant for parish councils, but certainly when it comes to West Suffolk and certainly County Council, not having to drive all that distance for often what is sometimes a 15-minute meeting. Absolutely crazy when, not only our time, but the fuel wasted and whatever else, going at us. And yeah, did you want to say that, Councillor Miller Jones? Or do you want me to say it for you? Sorry, I know you're putting it in the chat, but obviously the public can't see the chat.
Sorry, yes, I'm here. Yeah, for me, online meetings are much more accessible. I think maybe we should sometimes have physical ones, for people who online meetings are less accessible for, definitely. But for me, with childcare, I can always make it to an online one, sort of, if it's urgent, with Cal here in a way that I couldn't if it was physical. So for me, it's definitely easier.
Yeah, I think before getting to Councillor Stinchcombe, one thing obviously we haven't thought about yet is, and we tried it obviously last March, as March a year ago, of course, is a hybrid meeting. Sorry, Councillor Stinchcombe. So you're muted,
Sorry, I had unmuted earlier and then it seemed to remute itself. Yes, that is exactly what I was going to say, Chair, that a hybrid meeting, no, don't apologise, a hybrid meeting could be very useful, couldn't it, to make sure that members of the public, and I think Councillor Davidson knows at least one member of the public who used to turn up quite regularly when we were having face-to-face meetings, who is actually unable to attend now. So, I think there's an argument for as many as wish to be physically present when we're allowed to. But explore that possibility of. I think that hybrid meeting was not in the studio. I'm not sure. Not sure if I could. Yes, I think I did attend that one virtually, but I'm not actually sure where it was.
Is it the auditorium upstairs?
Yeah, that's right. But how well would that work in the studio? I don't want to lumber Colin with too much more investigation, but quite how would that work, that people could be contributing from home if they needed to be?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, technically it can be done, and it's just something we have to think about. Councillor Dave Smith.
I can see the need for remote meetings, obviously, when there's extraordinary circumstances, but I don't think it should become the norm. Hybrid meetings may work, but it's not what I would prefer. I like to see people in person. I think you build up a better relationship that way, a better rapport with your fellow councillors. I can understand if it was a county or a district meeting where you do travel, but we're in a small town, so travelling is not an issue. I understand, obviously people may have childcare issues and whatever, and where possible, we should be able to try to include them. But I think it should, as I said, I think it should be the exception rather than the rule.
Okay. But from what I'm gathering is what we don't want to do is exclude online meetings, which the government are not saying, but they've basically forced us down this route. Particularly, you know, when we're not even anywhere near out of lockdown for 2 or 3 months yet. In theory, you know, if we couldn't meet virtually, we couldn't have any meetings at all unless we had them in the open air somewhere with, you know, enough space for everybody. Are you happy? Is everyone happy for Colin to write back to HM government? I'd say HMRC then. HM government with the pros and cons as we've discussed. I can't see anybody vehemently against. Is that all right, Colin?
Yep. Okay. Yes. No problem at all. Thank you for that.
Okay. Item. Sorry, going down on the. There's nothing else on that page, so I'm just looking at my one as well. Sorry. That's 148, 149. We're on to. Just on C2142, we got an agenda item a bit later on there, so we'll take that then. And finally, for 150 rather. So we go back to 4B, which is Clark's report back on the letter regarding the household waste recycling centre. Colin.
Yes, so the portfolio holder came back to me quite quickly to say that they would be reviewing how things have gone. They're as a first stage, they're looking at enabling same day bookings to try and make sure that there's no gaps left when in fact that, you know, people could have used the household waste recycling site. And also updated on the proposals for a covered sort of indoor waste recycling centre on kind of on the site of the existing waste transfer station that is alongside the bypass. So I don't know whether county council is present. Know much more about it than that. I wasn't quite sure on the consultation for that quite how it worked, whether I missed seeing anything come to the town council, but whether or not we'll pick it up when it comes to planning.
Okay, I've got Councillor Roach, but I've lost Councillor Lucarini because he'll probably have something to say. Sorry, David, Councillor Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Be very formal. Now, the new site up on the industrial is going to be more in the same sort of vein as the one in Bury. So we're going to get level access to bins. There's no climbing stairs. You won't have to shut the site to clear away the full containers. There'll be no contact between the operational side and the public side. So it will be a lot better. And hopefully that's going to be done and dusted and up and running next year. So they think they're going to do it fairly quickly, but it is going to be a really good site when it's done, and it will be obviously a lot bigger. We won't get those queues that we get now coming onto Chilkston and blocking up the junction while they change skips and stuff. So I think it will be really good.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Thank you. Mind you, they did tell us that 4 years ago, didn't they? So we'll have to see what happens. But
they've allocated the money now, so it is going to happen.
Well, last time they were waiting for the S106 from Great Willesden. That's what they were waiting for. I lost. Councillor Lucrini, do you want to talk about your poll?
Yeah, West Suffolk Council contacted, I think, various councillors about getting feedback from their residents. I put a poll up on Facebook. I can't find it now, but it was overwhelmingly for going back to the old system, people don't seem to like the appointments just based on the fact that they can't get one when they want one, and you can only go once a week. I know Dave Smith and Joe Mason put posts up as well on some of their local groups.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Smith, Dave Smith. Yeah, Joe, go, Joe.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure exactly how many responses, about 40 responses, and it was very, very mixed. There was a lot for keeping the booking systems it was. There's a few sort of, yeah, we like it, but it needs tweaking. And there was some that were obviously against it. But I thought it seemed to be a very even split between for and against.
Councillor Mason.
It's really interesting because on the comments that we saw on the Keep Haverhill Tidy page, predominantly people were in favour of the booking system. One of my concerns is I think usage over the course of a week varies depending on what day of the week it is. And the amount of queuing that you get on a weekend probably means that those people who prefer booking would more likely do it on a weekend. And I think the answer may be somewhere in between the two, of having a mixed economy where during the week there is a underutilization of the waste services, and at the weekend it's particularly heavy. And ideally we'd ask all residents to spread the load across the week, because I'm also aware of the impact that it has on the local residents that live along that edge of that road going in. So it's really interesting that Councillor Lucarini's negative response from residents, Keep Haverhill Tidy one, was really positive about the booking system, and Councillor Smith is rather mixed. It's pick the bones out of that.
I've got Aaron, because I don't know if you found it. I've found it, Aaron. I don't know if you found
it. I agree with Joe. There probably needs to be some a middle ground approach, but just on the numbers, 788 people wanted it to go back to the way it was, and 432 people wanted to keep with the bookings. I'd be interested to know from Suffolk County Council though how many bookings there actually are over the course of a week, because I was there on Saturday, and in the 10 minutes I was there, I was the only person unloading my car. So I don't know whether they're not releasing many bookings, or whether a lot of people are taking the appointments and then not attending, just so they know they've got one in case they need it.
Okay, I've got Councillor Crooks, then Councillor Dave Smith again.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, you're more likely to get fly tipping with the booking system. People get frustrated that they can't get down the dump once they've cleared out their house. So a free for all is the best way, rather than getting frustrated and dumping it round the corner. Thank you, Chair.
I think it's a free for all at Couples Road is not the best thing. I think of the new site, I think probably yes. Sorry, Councillor Dave Smith again.
Just ask Councillor Lucarini, the poll he did. I didn't actually see it. Was it just that binary choice of for or against, or because as you know, these things are never sort of black and white like that, are they? There's always grey areas. So was it just the two answers of what, you know, you'd have another referendum, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was two answers, and when I sent it off to West Suffolk, I said exactly what kind of you've just said. You have to take the comments into consideration with the responses, because there's people that voted that they wanted it to go back to the way it was, but then said if they could get a same day appointment, they'd like it.
Okay, was there anybody else on this subject? Sorry, Laura, Councillor Jones. Is your hand still up?
Yeah, no, yeah. I just was going to say that I don't, have much experience with kind of what the wider community thinks, but I have actually just noticed quite a few comments on the Facebook pages with people agreeing, saying that they go to Saffron Walden because they have to book at Haverhill. And I quite often see people saying, oh, go to Saffron Walden, you don't have to book there. And that's not good for the environment if people are driving all the way to Saffron Walden just because they don't have to book. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I think it's the problem is the existing site is just not conducive to people queuing up, particularly if there's football on the Mottsfield as well. Councillor David Roach, are you still got your hand up?
Yeah, I did have my hand up. I don't think there's any long-term proposal from county for this to be a permanent thing. It only came in with part of the COVID stuff. So I think when we get the new one, it will be back as it was. And I'm not sure whether our current site will go. I think it might go back to as it was when the COVID stuff reduces. But it was certainly put in as a temporary measure. I don't think it's going to be a permanent one.
I mean, I personally, I know I've got Councillor Marks there, but I personally like the booking system. If I could just book it today and tomorrow, because I've got 2 lots of stuff to do, not have to wait a week. That's my biggest problem. And Councillor Lucarini is right. Every time I've been past there, there's not a soul in there. So, Councillor Marks, you're muted.
I know I am. Yeah, it takes a second for my computer to catch up with my finger. Just a question, really. Do we know what the opening hours are going to be? Because of course the one at the one down at Chalkstone, it changes during the seasons, and that's very confusing for people as well, which is actually really unhelpful. But a lot of people work and they quite like to drop stuff off before they go to work, and when they come home, and the way that the other one was working, closing at 4 o'clock, wasn't really conducive to that either. So I don't know what the opening hours are for the new site or proposal, but if somebody could consider, having it open till 6 so that people can take stuff after they get home from work, that would probably be also really useful and may help prevent fly tipping as well.
Effectively, it's open 24 hours a day, but only to lorries. That's what was approved some while back. Okay, Colin, go back to you. Have you got anything you need to go back to County Council on at all?
No, no, don't think so. If people are happy with the responses, I'm just checking. Work is currently taking place to fine-tune the booking system so that people go to make bookings on the same day. It doesn't say here that you'll be allowed to do more than one at a time, more than one a week, but it says they think same-day bookings will make a big improvement because it'll allow people to go on spur of the moment if there's spare capacity. Planning application is due into West Suffolk in April. So this month, and work start on the site later this year. Completion targeted for summer 22 for the new household waste recycling.
I think one major thing I've just remembered from the poll, so Aaron did, was the number of people who said, why have they stopped vans being able to go down there for trade waste, which is obviously now causing a lot of the fly tipping, because a lot of people can't get a mattress in the back of a Mini Cooper or something like that. I know you can get probably 30 people in it, but not a mattress. So, Councillor Lucarini again, and then we'll move on.
David, is there any plans for the site, the existing site, when the dump moves? Just thinking it'd make a fantastic car park as an overflow for East Town Park and Mottsfield.
As far as I know, I've got no idea what the plans for that site are once they've moved out. So no, don't know yet. What they will do though is keep that one running while the new one comes in. So we're not going to have the bit where we lose a site. So if we'd have upgraded that one, it would have been shut while they did the work. So we have the 2 running side by side for a while. But what they're going to do with it afterwards, I don't know yet.
Hopefully not housing. Not right next door to a sewage farm. Oh, they've done it already. Okay. Right. Should we move on to agenda item 5 then? First one is the police side of things. Not much to report this side from my side. Anybody got anything on the police? They've been very proactive. I've seen them out and about en masse, arresting people and goodness what else. Nothing. Okay.
Yeah, I did see the Sentinel team in town today. They're about.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's been watching it on Sundays.
No, because it can't be that good. In fact, it goes straight on to Dave. I have videoed it, but I don't think it'd be much around here.
No, it's all Ipswich.
It's Ipswich, yeah, exactly. Because I think they filmed Sentinel East, not Sentinel West.
Yeah.
Right, county councillors then. David? Paula, wherever Paula is. I've lost Paula.
Yeah.
There you are, down there. Paula, do you want to go first? Anything?
I haven't got a lot to say that's different from before,
Okay.
I'm afraid.
All
It's
right.
been quite quiet, actually.
Okay. Yeah, strange period. Councillor Roach, anything?
Again, as Paula said, it's obviously we're in election mode with county, so it's very, very quiet in terms of stuff coming out. I still get the corona stuff, so there's another one come out today that you'll see. My understanding on the lay-by on the bypass is that the signs, the no waiting signs have been ordered from highways and they're going to turn up. But of course, we can't enforce until the signs are there. And then our enforcement teams, as you said earlier on, John, they don't work after 8 o'clock. But without the signs, we can't enforce. So my understanding is they have been ordered.
Okay, they were there at one point.
Yeah, they were stolen off the.
I know.
So they're very,
sorry.
hopefully they'll fix them so that they can't easily be removed.
Okay. Councillor Marks?
On that very same issue, we've had some really helpful support from Kalina, and photographs of the lorries go to Kalina now. When people complain about them, we get photographs of the lorries. They are writing to those lorry companies and telling them that if they park in those laybys, because what they're doing is leaving the back of the truck and driving off, so they don't have to listen to the compressors going. So they have a nice night's sleep somewhere up on the industrial estate and leave the compressor running in the lay-by. And they have been instructed that if they do it again, they will be banned from coming to site. So, and I've seen the letters that have gone, they are really robust. And Kalina are really committed to working and helping us to ensure that doesn't happen. So if any of you, have got people complaining, just ask them if they could get a photograph of the lorry, because obviously otherwise Kalina don't know who they're writing to, but they are very, very supportive and they have had great success with it. So hopefully that's going to help as well.
Obviously not always Kalina, of course.
Just to continue, Mr. Mayor, if I may, some of the potholes in Couples Road up by the golf course have been done, and miraculously some have been missed. I suspect the ones that were missed are the little bit of track that sits in Essex. Although why they would do that, I don't know. But some were done. They had the road closed earlier on this week to do some of the potholes. There's other bits and pieces. John, you might know this. There's been some noise complaints coming from the Croft about loud music at a fitness centre. There's been some complaints.
About where, sorry?
Up on New Croft.
Oh, New Croft, yeah, no, I keep getting complaint from one person.
Yeah.
I've been up there with a noise meter myself.
Yeah. What it is, I've been up and talked to the fitness people directly. They've been having outside classes because the weather's
Yeah, I've dealt with it. I've been up and dealt with it, yeah.
So they've said again that they're gonna turn the music down, turn the bass down, and we'll see how it goes. But otherwise it's back to environmental health to try.
No, I'd already I don't know who contacted you, but I went up there. I've been up there several times with a noise meter, and I've spoken to Peter Betts, who in turn has spoken to the guy there who, I wouldn't even call it music, it was more thump, 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 thump.
Yeah, sort of drum and bass, isn't it?
If that's the modern term for it, yeah. And it's going across to Churchill Avenue and up there. In fact, it's even going as far as Boynton Estate as well. I don't know if Joe hears it at all, but
so anyway, they've promised me they're going to turn it down.
Okay.
We'll wait and see, and we'll monitor it, but we'll keep on top of that.
I did report back to the residents that complained, so I'm surprised. I don't know who else is.
We'll have to swap notes on who's.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens, because it was being dealt with by Peter Betts, as they're the landlords.
Yeah. All right. I think that's about it from me.
Okay. Any district councillors then? Councillor Mason.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a couple of bits of correspondence that I've been dealing with. Firstly, local residents, apologies to members who aren't on the planning committee, but a couple of weeks ago, the planning was put forward to the town council for a 66 bedroom care home on Boyton on Anne Suckling's Lane, or Anne Suckling's Road. It's got two names, don't ask me why. And it was quite frustrating that fresh papers were submitted by the developer tonight.
and the decision is being made on Wednesday. And it seems to me that it seems rather clumsy. Maybe somebody on the planning committee can pass comment. It seems to rather subvert democratic oversight of stakeholders and residents that that papers can be submitted at such a late time, and because people's comments that are being put on the portal are now significantly out of date, and people don't have sufficient time to pass comment on the latest papers being submitted. So there's been quite a lot of unease amongst the residents that actually revised plans have been submitted at such a late point in the process without really a proper opportunity for people to pass comment on those. That was one thing. And the other thing, of course, is we're waiting for a long overdue report, or the infrastructure plan for 2B. It seems to be stretching out a lot of, quite a long period of time. And again, there's some concerns from residents about the fact that some of the amenities that we're looking to have on the proposed development don't seem to be planned for. There's some discussion about whether the community centre may actually only be a community space attached to a school. And again, I'd ask members to try and support measures that increase our facility base. I'm sure a lot of you have parents that like to hire children's halls for children's birthdays. There is a lack of stock in Haverhill, and I'm just concerned that the lack of planning and detail that we're getting from Persimmon means that we're not going to have the facilities and services that we need for this growing estate. But yeah, lots of residents discussion about the planning at the moment.
Okay, just to let you know, Councillor Mason, obviously Councillor Smith, Crooks, myself, and Roach. Trying to know the fourth one. Sorry, Dave. You actually haven't missed my chat window. That's why I didn't see it. We knew about a couple of the extra documents because we were told about them, but we haven't. I did notice this morning the extra site plan or something like that. I think it was online, but we've not been told about that yet. Obviously, we'll have to see what comes up on Wednesday. It is recommended for refusal by the officer. I'm not aware that there's been any material change of mind at all, but we'll find out on Wednesday. I did offer or did suggest that if anyone wants, I don't know whether you're talking on Wednesday, Councillor Mason, at all. I'm
unable to, but Councillor Manners will be attending.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so at least somebody's, that's good. In terms of the other one, just in on the north west, I understood when I was speaking to the planning officer about Great Willsey the other day, and obviously they deal with that and the other systems up there, that she's trying to encourage Persimmon to come in with an all-encompassing infrastructure plan for the whole development across the whole site, not just for sites 1A or 2B or whatever, that sort of thing, just to see. But the master plan and certainly the outline plan permission specifically said, and the S106 specifically says what's there. It's not the most brilliant S106. I've said it many, many times, but it was written about 10 years ago. They got better now. They've got a dedicated officer at Westside. So Great Willsey is a hell of a lot better. But yeah, we need to just keep an eye on things. Certainly, I would agree. But yeah, it's. I believe they're going to come up with the whole infrastructure. Sorry, Councillor Marks.
Yeah, just really on the district report, we're getting, as you all know, a terribly worrying amount of vandalism, not least bins being set on fire relentlessly and them being turned over. They've been pulled off their concrete platform all along Railway Walk, and the platforms have been damaged. And the other day when we walked along, they'd actually pulled one off and then they'd chained it on its side to the bridge, so we couldn't even righten it again. This is really wanton vandalism, and it's a worrying pace at the moment. I don't know what we can do about it, but of course we've got the public complaining that we're not picking up the litter readily enough. We're complaining that the bins aren't being emptied sufficiently, and then on top of that we've got this terrible situation of vandalism. I don't know what we can do, but it does seem to have picked up a pace in the last few weeks, and everybody seems to be complaining about it across the patch, not just, you know, where I'm walking. I think we're seeing it generally. I just don't know what we can do. On the other side, I have made some really good progress with Havebury. They have now started their multi-agency estate walks again. It's got to be very limited at the moment, only because of COVID, but they are intending to widen their invitation as they did before. We had a really successful walk on the bird estate for 2 hours the other morning. 13 things were identified. We knocked on doors and we told people who had fly tipped to pick their fly tipping back up. I've asked them to produce letters so that where people aren't in, they can put those through the doors to say, contact Havebury, there is an issue, because obviously we don't always know. Just because it's outside somebody's house, it might not belong to them. Although if it's the tree cut down in their garden and they're vociferously saying it's not theirs and it's suspiciously the same tree, it does look a bit odd. We also looked in bins, and we took bins back to houses where they'd got the wrong things in them. And we did ask people where their bins were overflowing, so they get caught by the wind and then all the debris floats across the patch, to shut their bins completely by crushing down. Everything was, particularly the blue bins, people just didn't crush stuff down in them. So we're going to do that again on the 6th of May, but they will be starting these regularly, and they will be inviting all councillors to go along as they did before. So everybody will be invited. The only reason it's limited at the moment is simply because of COVID, and I have particularly asked to go along with that. They are being extremely helpful and they are working really well with us. So I think what with that and Kalina, it's been a little bit of a success story, but the vandalism is absolutely not a success story, and I don't know what we can do.
Thank you, Chair. Part of the problem with public bins is that they are not being installed properly. The turret style bins are not being bolted down onto their concrete slabs. And I saw a wheelie bin publicly installed, you know, in a metal frame that equally could be knocked over. They're not being screwed down to concrete foundations. So that is, I'm not saying that justifies the vandalism, but that's how they can be quite easily vandalised, by just knocking them over or just dragging them away somewhere, as Councillor Marks reported. Thank you.
To that, I don't know if you know, Councillor Stinchcombe, but they actually turned over a recycling bin in Lower Downslade car park, and I have to tell you, 3 people couldn't put it back up right again. I mean, they're relentless at the moment, and it's quite heartbreaking.
It's quite surprising how somebody who's inebriated can move something that's really heavy. We had it with the picnic benches on the market square. All 4 of them were turned over by one person. I know 100 kilos each, and this guy apparently wasn't exactly Mr. I was trying to think his name, Jeff Capes. He was quite slight, apparently, according to the police. Right, any other district councillors? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Still having an ongoing struggle with families and communities to do something a bit more around PSPOs. I'd like a bit of support as well from, you know, I know you've all reported stuff, but if you do see people drinking in certain areas like the bus station, outside the Arts Centre, High Street, etc., could you email families and communities, Davina Howe, just to let her know, because you know, as much information as flying over that way would be, you know, much appreciated, because, yeah, what they're saying at the moment is, oh, we don't seem to get very many reports. Well, a lot of stuff goes on, so as many people that can report stuff, it'd be, you know, much appreciated. And it isn't just the police's responsibility, it is the councils. They implement these PSPOs and don't seem to want to you know, actually spend any time, you know, doing any enforcement. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mason back again, and then I'll come back to Councillor Hanlon.
Thanks, Chair. Just really quickly. I've also had some correspondence about the no entry sign to Market Square from Camps Road. There doesn't seem the information giving out to residents about its temporary nature. Where are we standing with that? Is there any move to make that permanent? Because you know, there hasn't been any discussion at council, or there hasn't been any consultation about it, or is it just simply a temporary measure because of COVID, and we can expect to see it removed at a later time? Thank you.
Well, I was going to answer, but I'll leave Councillor Carini to answer it.
So at the start of COVID, West Suffolk Council emailed all district councillors to invite them to talk about COVID measures, which included things like a temporary one-way system, closing the High Street and closing Queen Street. I believe only 4 district councils actually responded to the consultation, and they've been kept in the loop since. But it's not permanent. It's only temporary due to COVID. But at the moment, West Suffolk, I had a meeting today, West Suffolk's working out what to do next, and how they can engage with local members on the future and COVID recovery, which would include things like that one-way system and the high street closure.
Is that about this, Councillor Crooks? I've got Councillor Hanlon as well.
Yes, I was just going to mention, yeah, it's an absolute nightmare at the moment, because you've got a major road, Camps Road, goes to nowhere. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. So you've got 2 roads, you've got Mill Road and Camps Road coming down to nowhere. And at the moment, Haverhill is booming. I don't know about if anyone else has noticed in the last 2 weeks since we've opened up, you know, the town is absolutely booming. I've been flat out at the weekend, absolutely brilliant. But with that road closure, it just doesn't make any sense at all to continue with it. And I'd ask the county councillors to put pressure to put it back to how it was. Because can anyone explain to me why that is still being implemented? You know, why? Why do you still need Camps Road to be one way? I don't understand. And if we look at the master plan going forward, I cannot remember exactly what the master plan proposed, but that was definitely the 2-way, wasn't it? And even having Swan Lane as two-way, wasn't it, our Haverhill master plan? So if we take the retrospect step of implementing this one way, you know, it will absolutely be disastrous, and it actually goes against our ambitions for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Carini, back again.
It was done because between 10 and 4, Camps Road doesn't go anywhere anyway. And the problem was people were driving all the way up to the no entry signs of Swan Lane and doing 3-point turns. Paul will tell you see it on market days all the time. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's dangerous. That's why it was done, so that any traffic would just have to would go through one way and not get into a situation where they're getting into an area they have to do a 3-point turn. Outside of 10 to 4, I kind of take your point, and maybe there's another measure that could be put in.
Yeah, although from my own perspective, I think it's quite popular the way it is now, but that's another matter. It's certainly keeping the through traffic out of the high street, which is one of the concerns. So I don't want to go on too much on this. Councillor Brown, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Crooks, and then I'll get on to Councillor Hanlon.
Yeah, Councillor Crooks is right. That's what needs to happen. Is Swan Lane needs to be, 2-way, and unfortunately, BT stuck one of their data boxes straight in the way, to make it, hugely difficult. I think it costs around about £100,000 to move that. There was no consultation, and they just, put it there. There is aspirations to potentially turn Swan Lane into 2-way, which would make a lot easier. Traffic could come down Camps Road and then out through Swan Lane and out. But yeah, we'll see.
And don't forget also that there was another desire for a link road as well. There still is a desire for a link road, which would negate the need to have any of that open. Councillor Crooks again.
Sorry, Chair. Just to remember, it was 5 years ago, Suffolk Highways came forward with a proposal, didn't they?
Yeah.
Where they have it one way, but at least you would allow the traffic from Camps Road to go up Mill Road. And that was the proposal. If you do a search on the
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Councillor Brown was dead against that at the time, and I agreed with Councillor Brown. But that's what the proposal was, to change Mill Road direction. Instead of having this bizarre situation, we've got a major road that goes nowhere. Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Hanlon. Sorry, Pat, keep going.
Yes, fine. The only trouble with go two-way first one lane was apparently going out into the main road was very dangerous. For turning right. Turning left's not so bad, but for turning right, it was very dangerous. So that's one of the reasons why they were sort of against the two-way. This was years ago. Getting on to my part, as everyone knows, that JNIC won their appeal to build houses on the Science Park. I've had phone calls and emails about the first zoning in particular, where the houses are going to go, where the shuttle is called, the pub, that turning into the Science Park. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a sign that says, in brickwork says Science Park? I know they got one where the epicentre is, but is there one on that part as well? I think there is, isn't there?
Research park, yeah.
So obviously that's not going to be a research park now. I've had phone calls asking me if that's going to come down. So I don't know how the officers could get in touch with JNIC or what have you, but they're very upset about it. Obviously, we had a lot of, and also we've got people in Ickleton Place that are constantly complaining to me about the lack of parking spaces. And there's one particular resident that wants parking on one side of the road. I was thinking on the lines of, when you go into Bury, you have one side of the road non-parking, then halfway up the other side, so particular places where they've got banks on Millfields Way, you could add that as double yellow, but the opposite side where they haven't got banks, take that away, so they can park there. Because we've got speed humps, so I don't think there's any problem with cars being parked in Millfields Way, personally, in certain bits. But so that's my report, and that's what I've been getting through. Thank you, Chair.
I think we all agree about the research park and also Carrow. There is a meeting, I believe, this week at West Suffolk amongst the senior officers and their legal advisors about what to do next. I mean, I know what I'd like them to do, but we'll see what happens. I think the other thing about the parking, I get the same thing, Pat. I think Councillor Brown would, myself, well remember the meetings we had with Highways and Haverhill and all these people 4 or 5 years ago, where it was basically agreed to remove some of the W lines. We've asked for it numerous times since. That would solve a lot of the problems. I have had complaints from disabled people who say, "Oh, I can't park even for an hour." And I say, "Well, of course you can. You can park on the W lines up to 3 hours." They say, "But I like to park on the verge." I said, "Well, don't park on the verge. Park on the W lines, and nobody will give you a ticket." So, did you want to come back quickly, Pat? Or
yeah, very quickly. Yeah, it's just that as far as the what you were saying. I forgot it now.
Well, research park or parking?
Yeah, I can't remember now. Sorry.
All right, we don't worry about it. Okay. Councillor, so I had Councillor Liz Smith, I think, first before. No, was that? Oh, I thought I saw your hand up there. Sorry. Councillor Dave Smith.
Yeah, no report as such, and the things that people have already raised. I think we've all got sort of like common themes coming through to us at the moment. It's a question really about going back to Persimmon and the fact that they've sort of like taken away footpaths and the like, and hedgerows. Are there any footpaths that we know of within the town that haven't been registered as footpaths? Because I was saw what to me was an interesting video the other day about footpaths and the fact that if you don't register these footpaths by January the 1st, 2026, they will forever be lost as a public right of way. So is there any footpaths in the town that we know of that we think should be put onto this register? Because this is a once and for all thing.
I'm going to look at Councillor Stinchcombe, because your scenario of the railway walk, I think, is relevant, isn't it?
Yes, in as much as we've been told by public rights of way at county that they will not prioritise any, contrary to what Councillor Roach has told us before, they have to prioritise. They're terribly busy doing essential work, and they will not prioritise, especially if something like the railway walk over on the south side it's in public ownership. Therefore, there is no question of it being blocked ever, they think. Therefore, why would they prioritise that? So it's not really a legal right. And as Councillor Brown has pointed out before, there's nothing to say that district council might say, well, we just don't have the cash, we're not going to clear this path, and it just becomes blocked. It's not that they're deliberately blocking it, they're accidentally letting it get overgrown to the point where no one can use it unless they go in with a machete, and clear it themselves. Yeah. So there is a potentially a worry there, but the county's attitude is, well, if it's in public ownership, what's your problem? It's not going to be a problem.
So if I just come back, it's not so much the ones that are on maps already, and it's ones that people think, oh, I remember when I was a kid, there used to be a footpath through there, and it was a right of way, but it's not designated a right of way as such, and that's the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah. There's obviously a subtle legal thing about what is a right of way and what's not a right of way.
Well, there are permissive rights of way. It's not. Yes. They're not rights of way. There are permissive uses. Where the landowner tolerates it, but hasn't stood in its way. And I guess if those go on for long enough, they are the basis of claiming a right of way. But if county isn't going to do it, because they don't prioritise it, then we're knackered, because it's not something we can do unilaterally. We can ask for it unilaterally, but we can't achieve it.
I'm very conscious of the time, so just Councillor Roach quickly, and then Councillor Hanlon, please.
Just very quickly, there is a process to get things on what's called the definitive map, and people like the Ramblers Association are really, really good at doing that and getting these on. So, for example, those footpaths we've got round through over the Persimmon site and over by the water tower, they're not on the definitive map. They're not public rights of way. So there are stuff there. It's not a question of prioritising. They just take each one as they come along. So it's about applying for it to put it onto the definitive map. So if you don't apply to put it on the definitive map, it ain't going to happen. So there is a process. You just have to follow it.
All right, Councillor Hanlon.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Very quickly, this is what I forgot. It's just that with the highways, but my residents write to them and they write back saying they've run out of money all the time, and that's the big problem. And that's so I'm wondering if the two county councillors can sort of have a word with highways, really, because it's not fair that Haverhill gets left out on sort of things because it's a priority parking. They've got a real problem in Ickerton Place with parking. So really, something needs to be done. Thank you, Chair.
The trouble is, Councillor Hanlon, is repeating what we did 4 or 5 years ago. You had to, in those days, of course, there was multiple TROs for the whole of the county. Now there's only one. So they have to do the TRO to start with. They have to go out to consultation as well to ask people if they want them removed. The actual physical bit of painting a bit of black paint on top of a yellow is probably a case of going down the B&Q and get something. But it's actually that, and that consultation it's like the ones Dorio Lines are trying to get in Hollands Road. They estimated between 18 months and 2 years to do it. It's not just a case of just extinguishing them. You can't do it, unfortunately. As much as if you want new lines put in. When we were doing the CPE, when I was going around town looking at legalities of yellow lines and things on behalf of county, it was amazing how much wasn't done properly and how much had been missed and things that we wanted changed. So, but I think you're right. I think we need to keep pressurising them. you know, it's a new financial year coming up. Okay. Quickly moving on. Obviously, you've seen my report. I think we've discussed some of those items anyway. I don't think it was, unless anyone's got any questions on that. I'd like to move on. Can't see anything. Thank you. Item 6, Mayor's report. As I mentioned, there is nothing because I haven't done anything. Obviously, this is my last meeting. I'll come to that at the end. So whoever takes over, which I think we know who it is, but whoever takes over, I hope they carry on doing a very brief report of a similar vein. I think it's really useful for people to know what's going on. Item 7, to receive a verbal report on One Haverhill partnership. Start with Colin. He's been very quiet for a while.
I don't think there's anything particularly to report on One Haverhill.
That's why I said it. So, yeah, I don't think there is there? Councillor Hanlon?
Chair, we've got a new chairman.
Yeah, but I think that was reported in the minutes, wasn't it?
I thought that was already reported. I apologise if it's not, but you're absolutely right. We have, but I think that was in the last meeting.
Yeah. Yes, it was. It was on the last meeting, Pat. Okay, moving on then. Nothing else on that. Right, adoption of committee meetings. Planning committee of the 6th of April. Councillor Hanlon, presumably proposing, just nod, say yes, yes. Seconding date, Councillor Dave Smith. Sorry, Liz, I didn't see your hand. You weren't in the camera, sorry. All those in favour, please show. Sorry, I don't know who's talking. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So I've got that, Councillor Stinchcombe, so I just. Right. Sorry, I've all done all that. All the time. Energy and Sustainability Committee move of the 12th of April. Can I have a proposal, please? Councillor Liz Smith, Councillor Tony Brown, seconded. All those in favour, please show. Lovely, thank you.
Just on that, can I mention to councillors that there's a date now set as we have a keynote speaker booked. So Thursday, the 20th of May, will be the Sustainable Haverhill launch event, all online. And we have Chris Hines, who is a climate change activist. He is chair of Surfers Against Sewage. He also worked for the Eden Project, etc. His sister lives in the town, so he was delighted to be asked because he has a connection with Haverhill, even though he's down in Cornwall. So we're very pleased to have him, and hopefully you'll all be able to come along or attend that meeting. We won't be sending out any of the publicity until after the election, after the pre-election period ending, and then there'll be quite a big splash to be going on with that.
Councillor Tony Brown.
What time's that proposed for, Colin?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Did you want to say anything else at this stage?
So
I thought the discussion after the meeting, I thought.
Okay, fine. Okay, so Councillor Hanlon?
yeah, sorry, I didn't hear it. What date was it, please?
20th, May the 20th.
Right, okay.
Right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 9. Authorise the following payments for £42,902.57. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor David Roach first, Councillor Margaret Marks second. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Item 9B for Bravo, draft E-marked reserves 2021 to approve the E-marked reserves. Colin, do you want to talk about them? Everyone's had them. So.
Useful to put them on screen
Yes,
to
please.
run through them.
Yeah, yeah. If anyone's got any specific questions.
So this is the basically where we hold funds for specific purposes. The bits that are in red are the kind of pieces of interest, if you like. So there's a suggestion that the Arts and Leisure and Marketing Development Fund is deleted and the funds transferred to website maintenance. We've got 2 website earmark reserves, which seems a little silly. I'm proposing amending the ceiling on the election reserve. If we had a full town council election of all 16 seats on its own without any other council involvement, the estimated cost is £40,000. We allocate £11,000 each year to this sinking reserve. So if we've got £30,000 in it and 11,000 for the current year, we have enough to pay for a entire election. So at the moment it's £20,000 in that reserve, but that means that it doesn't need to go above 30,000. Street furniture, that's just to report that it's been spent through because we ran a lot of additional benches and bench repairs through that budget.
Can I just ask, Colin, on that? Did you put labour costs to that as well?
No, the labour costs are in the staff budget, and there's a staff reserve.
So is this just for the benches, also the picnic benches?
Yes, I'll have everything that'll have gone through.
Fine, sorry.
Leisure development. So this would have been extremely high indeed because of all of the events that were cancelled. So I think it would have had something like £70,000 or £80,000 in, which would clearly have been rather a lot. So the reserve is maxed out at that, and I don't advise there's any need to change that at the moment. This one's just technical, that the youth strategy activities would not have had enough funds in it to fund the already agreed budget from it. So money has been brought in from general reserves to make sure the fund of 32,000, which is the budget for to come out of this fund in the new financial year, it is actually got sufficient in it. The staffing reserve, that's the calculation. It does. The 20% doesn't change, but the staff budget clearly does change. So we're now at 8.5% of budget is in reserves. That's quite a lot, to be honest. There's certainly plenty to be going on with. Lease and centre reserve. This balance isn't going to change. Apologies for the typo. But I would have thought that this is likely to be spent if the council approves a double glazing work on the Leyson Community Centre. That will then be granted to the Community Trust. Okay, that's just a name change. The event reserve. So again, this is another one where we've taken a lot of funds out of it because of all the events that were cancelled. And I'm proposing that a ceiling of £15,000 is put in. It didn't originally have a ceiling because, as you can see, it was just crept up to £7,000. But there's no point it being more than the cost of a big event. Otherwise, effectively, there's no way we would spend the reserves, and it's not lawful for councils to maintain reserves that they can't spend. Community grants reserve. This is a reserve that is grants that were awarded this year but were not able to be given out. The last financial year, they can't be given out. So there's 2 grants. You earmark £4,000 to Rail Futures East, and also approved Haverhill Breastfeeding Friends grant £3,120. So by having a budget to cover those costs, it means it won't come out of the current year fund. Otherwise, you'd have lost half your new grants pot.
Sorry, Colin, could you have accrued that rather than you reserved it? That's counting speak, I suppose.
It's easy to do it this way round because it reminds you that it's there.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
The new reserve is the council asked that 200,000 be transferred from the property acquisition reserve to go into the a new splash pad reserve. So at some point that'll be spent in the current financial year. And also, when the budget was approved, you approved a tax-based mitigation reserve of £50,000 that will be carried forward into the new financial year to offset having to increase the precept, because we're not expecting to get a second lot of the local council tax grant fund that was reinstated for 1 year only this year. So that puts our earmark reserves at just over £1 million. And it's all in line with what was agreed when the budget was set.
Okay, unless we've got any comments on that, could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Bruce Davidson, and a seconder, sorry, it was Councillor Margaret Marks, I think I currently saw there as the picture changed. All those in favour, please show. Lovely, thank you very much. Right, moving on to item C, which is the events earmark reserve. I'll leave that back to you, Colin.
Yes, so that events earmark reserve, that £15,000, there is a government welcome back fund, which has gone to West Suffolk to administer. The government announced the money and then weeks and weeks later finally sent through the rules for how the money is to be spent. And Andrea Maley, John Miles at West Suffolk are busy working their way through that. It's fiendishly complicated from what they were telling us being Councillor Burns and Councillor Lucarini, when we had a discussion with John and Andrew about this. What it's for is basically to fund events around getting people back into the town after June 21st, when in theory all the COVID restrictions finish. The difficulty we have is that if we're going to do what is asked, such as put on events, street entertainment, and so on, you can't just snap your fingers on June the 20th and have it all in place on June the 21st. Really, we would struggle to even get that all in place now. So we need to book people for an event, and we need to have a certainty. So whilst we can apply for the funds, and we're working up a proposal with West Suffolk for how the welcome back funds can be used, by the time that's actually approved, it'll be too late to organise the event. So what I'm asking is if we can use this fund simply to underwrite it so that Nick can book stuff, so that if for any reason we don't get, there's no reason to assume we won't get welcome back funding, though we don't suddenly have to cancel everything at the last minute.
Any comments at all? As Colin says, it's fiendishly complicated, but what do you expect from government? Councillor David Roach.
You just need a formal proposal. If so, I'm happy to propose.
Okay, that's fine. Can I have a second? And then Councillor Bruce Davison. That's great. Unless there's any other comments, all those in favour, please show.
Thank you.
Sorry, Paul and Laura, obviously I can't see you, so I assume you're okay.
Councillor Jones has a hand up.
Yeah, was that a yes?
Yeah, that's me raising my hand. Whenever you do a vote, I do my little hand raising reaction thing.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
I have voted yes to everything. If
I know
didn't.
you have. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, your picture moved as I was looking around. Sorry.
Yes. All right.
Right. Responsible Financial Officer report, Colin. Item D.
Do you want me to share that as well?
Yeah, please, may as well.
This is really just hopefully was for advice before the meeting. I wasn't proposing going through as we would with the Finance Committee. It's just to show that we are reporting what's there. Thanks to Councillor Davidson, who kindly had a look at the original bank statements earlier today and reconciled them against the reported balances here. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but hopefully he's willing to confirm that they are a true report on the actual bank balances.
Saves me a job. Can you just verbally say so, Councillor Davison? If you wouldn't mind, just for the record.
Yes, they definitely are a true reflection of the bank statements against the RFO report.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Colin.
But everything else really isn't terribly exciting. As always, it's the council and the community trust having each other funds. But we have worked everything out so that Heartseats has a soft landing and everything works out okay for the community trust. We have the year-end close down happening tomorrow. This is the
any comments on the RFO report at all? As Colin said, it's normally the debtors and creditors that takes up most of the time of finance. Okay, so this is just for noting anyway. So if you're all happy to note it, can't see any shaking of heads or anything. Thank you very much. Right, item 10, which is the second draft of the member officer relations document. Hopefully you've all received it. Thank you very much for your comments on behalf of Colin anyway. Those who did submit any comments. Was there anything you wanted to say on this? I thought it was pretty straightforward.
No, if people were happy with the changes, if anyone wants to query anything, we can put it up on screen.
Councillor Mason?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm afraid I didn't read it until quite late. I had a slight query, and maybe I'm being a little bit pedantic. So, paragraph 2.2. Is there any chance we could have it on a screen? What I was trying to do was find a paragraph about a situation, and I'm sure it wouldn't happen, but a situation in which a member may want to instruct an officer or put an officer in an awkward position, let's say at an event. I'm just thinking, for example, one of the council officers is organising an event, running an event. We've got well-meaning and dedicated councillors offering to help. The event would be led and organised by the officer. Is there anything in here that kind of makes it explicit that members wouldn't be able to instruct? It's kind of hinted at in 2.2, but no, I didn't really find anywhere else explicitly talking about putting officers in an awkward position in regards to events being held. That was just a small point.
Colin?
I mean, there's general discussions about it says in terms of unfair advantage of the position, voicing opinions, respecting the role of people in line management, all the rest of it. But I mean, I think it's not really the intention of this document to start going through very specific scenarios, because inevitably it'll start missing things out. I mean, if people feel that that's a particular issue that you want to have covered, we can say look at including that. But I would hope that it would be sufficient in there, that it would be really clear of how councillors should be behaving in the case that you are describing.
Yeah, Councillor Roach.
Yeah, perhaps I can just make this a bit easier for Jeff. In general, members don't have the right to instruct officers. They're instructed by their manager, which is the town clerk. At the top end of that, the town clerk's boss is the residing mayor. He's effectively the town clerk's line manager. But members shouldn't get into the habit of wanting to instruct officers. That's not what we're here for. It's not part of our role to instruct officers. It's the town clerk's job to manage his team. And if the councillors or council in general doesn't like the way something's done, you raise it through the various levels. This isn't intended to be in this protocol, I don't think. Does that make that clear, Colin? I think that's the best way of.
You're absolutely right. It is not lawful for individual councillors to give instructions to members. I mean, to officers rather. And clearly, in the case of an event, you're there as a willing volunteer colleague, etc. And you know, the example I've given is somebody, you know, can you pass the spanner or something like that? You could take that as an instruction, but it's that sort of thing, just the general necessary discussions and questions and answers and requests that go through on the radio. It's all absolutely fine. But I think what Councillor Mason is describing is clearly covered by the legislation, as Councillor Roach pointed out.
I don't think it should be that you know, the spanner is a good example, but you know, there's nothing for, in my view anyway, members, you know, if they've got a good idea about something, expressing that before the event and saying, hey, have you thought about this? You know, that sort of scenario.
Yes, I agree with you. I think the difference is where if I think what Councillor Mason is getting at is where people start giving instructions as if they are running the event, and you know, when I'm there, whilst I'm, if you like, the most senior officer there, I'm not there in that capacity, and therefore if somebody comes up to me and asks me my opinion of how something should be done, I will direct them to probably Nick, because Nick is almost certainly going to be the person organising the event, and and that's what you'd expect councillors to do. That if an officer came seeking instructions, you'd simply point out, well, I'm not in charge today. You need to go and talk to the person who is in charge. And to be honest, staff know that. Staff do know full well. So it's almost more likely to be the case of just general chatter. But I'm not sure there would ever be a scenario. I've never seen councillors giving instructions as if they were running the event.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone else hasn't got any comments, I guess we're all happy to adopt this document. So could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Bruce Davidson, seconded. Councillor McManus was second. So all those in favour now, please show. Thank you very much. Considered adopted, and thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Right, item 11. This is an interesting one. Exclusive rights to burials.
I just wanted to test the water on this one, Chair. It's a request through. There's a proposal. It's no more than a proposal at the moment to investigate whether it would be possible to get a private bill through Parliament that would enable exclusive rights of burials that have been issued in perpetuity to be extinguished. At the moment, they can't be in civil cemeteries, they can be in Church of England cemeteries. But basically, you probably, even if, I mean, Haverhill, I don't know how much time is left in terms of the cemetery there. I had a discussion with Damien Parker some years back that the need to find new burial space in West Suffolk did exist. The trouble is, you can't just put cemeteries anywhere. There's lots of issues about the ground, which means that lots of areas are not suitable. And unfortunately, it turns out that, generally speaking, ground that's suitable for cemeteries is also suitable for prime development, which makes it very, very expensive. So it's very hard and very, very expensive for communities to find new burial spaces. Many, like the Haverhill Cemetery, are constrained. There's no opportunity to extend the burial site. So that if burials have to take place in a new burial area, clearly it would not be in the centre of Haverhill, it would be some way away. West Suffolk is the burial authority. One would imagine they would be looking to find a single site somewhere, which means people of Haverhill would have to travel to get to it. So this proposal is basically to allow the reuse of burial plots after 100 years, so long after everybody who was present at the original funeral have long since gone, and it would mean that the graves could be used again. So it can, or it happens in Europe a lot. It can happen in Church of England cemeteries, but this is a private member's bill. And what we're interested in is simply what people think. If they think that's a complete non-starter, or whether they think that it would be interesting to explore it some more. All we're asking is our opinion at the moment. We've just been asked, in principle, what do we think of the idea? Councils are feeding back a response. So some councils are saying they've got plenty of space, so they're not really interested. Others are saying we're running out of space, we are interested.
Okay, I've Colin told me about this last week, and I did put my comments back to Colin, but I've got David Roach, Margaret Marks, Tony Brown and Liz Smith at the moment. So David Roach first, and Laura as well.
Just very quickly, this is something that will come up under local plan. So the whole of West Suffolk obviously needs more burial space. So we will be looking at it as part of the local plan process anyway, for more burial cemetery sites as we go forward. So it's not being forgotten about.
Okay. Margaret Marks, Councillor Marks.
Yeah, as Colin rightly says, this happens a lot in Europe, and it is an excellent idea. Just wanted to question, do you remember when the Haverhill in Bloom cleared up the churchyard to make it tidy and to put the benches in? They had to move all the graves and the gravestones then, because they were all moved to the back of the churchyard. So there must already be some protocol that exists for being able to do that. So I'm quite surprised that we don't have that already as a possibility, because absolutely, it really does make a lot of sense. But we must have done it in the churchyard, because all the gravestones were moved to the back.
Churchyard.
Yeah, you said Church of England churchyard. You're allowed to do it already.
Okay. So there is a differentiation between what can happen in a burial plot in a churchyard as to in a cemetery. That makes no sense. So the two need harmonising, don't they? So actually, we've already got. You actually already have got, in principle, a process, haven't you?
Okay, Councillor Brown, lost you again. Where are you? Oh, there you go, down the bottom there.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I am totally against disturbing old graves and old graveyards. They're fascinating areas. People gain a lot of family history and comfort from visiting, their old ancestors' grave sites. It's a fascinating part of history. What you're talking around, also a lot of cemeteries contain Commonwealth war graves. We're talking around covering those over, removing those. No, I am absolutely, totally against that idea. Thank you.
Councillor Liz Smith.
Yeah, as a family historian, I'm probably sympathetic with Councillor Brown's views. However, we are lacking space. I mean, the situation in Haverhill, have we got much space left in that cemetery? I don't know. Do you know, John?
I did ask, but I haven't had a response.
They've been talking about this for several years that I know of, saying that we're running out of space. But the trouble is that you get these developments like Persimmon and Great Willsey, but they don't include anything in the S106 agreement to pay for a new site. So when it comes to a new site, they may say, "Oh, we need to do this because we've got no money," which really will bug me again. But I don't know the answer.
I mean, the environmentalist in me thinks, we need a better way of doing things because we've all run out of space. But I'm sympathetic with those that that are interested in family history and want to maintain those links. We need to perhaps explore more spaces as part of the S106 or something like that. That something needs to be done so that we can explore local areas rather than sort of sending people too far away, I hope.
Councillor Miller-Jones.
Yeah, so I also I love history. For me, I think the important part of sort of that would need to be preserved are the actual gravestones themselves, rather than the specific plot. Because I mean, being realistic, decomposition happens. It's not the space itself that I think is necessarily historically significant. And as Colin said, sort of living relatives would be long gone by the time these plots got reused. I think, sure, from the perspective of wanting to kind of look at the gravestones of your ancestors or just, the people of an area, I think the gravestones are definitely a kind of significant thing that would want to be preserved. And I'm not sure how that would happen. What would be the plan? What would be done with the gravestones? Is that something that you could answer, Colin?
Oh, I've got no idea. I was just asked to find out in principle what councillors might think about it. I don't have a view either way, to be perfectly honest.
Because I mean, I know often in churchyards you see kind of gravestones. In fact, we've got that in this one, like kind of lined around, which I assume are ones that has happened with them. So, I mean, I think if the gravestones could be kept, but more people buried in the space, I think that would be a kind of a compromise that would sort of give us the best of both worlds, really.
Okay. Councillor Crooks, then Councillor Mason. Thanks, Laura.
Dead against this idea. Can you imagine going to Haverhill Cemetery tomorrow and looking at all the graves that are older than 1920 and destroying all of those graves? There would be dozens and dozens and dozens of them. Absolutely absurd. Councillor Roach has already answered it, that we've got to look for another site, and that is the answer. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mason, then I'll talk maybe.
It was just amusing. I just wondered whether any members of the faith community will be consulted on this.
I don't think it's not a consultation, and I think we're really careful that this is simply gauging people's opinions. There's no right or wrong answer to this. If the message goes back to say, to be perfectly honest, no, we don't think this is a great idea, then that's the message that will go back. It's not stopping something from happening. It's simply people are asking, is there enough support for this to even be proposed? And if the answer is, well, there isn't from Haverhill, then that's absolutely fine.
Okay, I've got Councillor Luccarini. Do you want to go first? Because I'd like to say something as well.
Yes, I really dislike the idea. I'd be horrified if they started clearing out the front of the cemetery. To me, it almost just sounds like a cost-saving exercise so we don't have to find new sites.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just going to Tracy what. Sorry, if I may go. I don't know. Are you still wanting to talk, Laura?
Yeah, I did have something else to say, but go on. It's
okay. Well, let me just basically, I'm going to praise what I said to Colin. I'm not a great fan of burials per se, but I'll be dead against this. And as Aaron just said, it's an easy way for authorities not to provide more burial space. They've been known for years that we're doing this. No joined up thinking because nobody bothered asking about money in the S106s. Give an example was my paternal great grandparents are buried in a cemetery in Bolton, and I went up there 2 years ago. But they died 140 years ago. But 3 of my uncles are in the grave, who are my dad's brothers, who also died more than 100 years, in fact 130 years ago now. But have died young. So I went up there to get some more engraving done on the headstone because they're missing some of the names, but also to mark my respect. And I'd be horrified if I went up there and found all I could find was a gravestone chucked somewhere, and I wouldn't know where they were. And so that's and I think the example I gave was, what would Chris Gertine say tomorrow if he went up there and found Daniel Gertine's grave moved? Or this. I have a problem. I think the fundamental problem is the councils know full well how many people are, as a percentage of people dying. I think it's still quite low as a percentage of people dying who get buried. The vast majority get cremated or have what do they call them, where you get buried on your own land and all that sort of stuff.
Green burial.
That's it. That's the word. Thanks, Anne. So that's my personal view, as I don't think we should do that. So going back to, I lost Laura again. Oh yeah, down the bottom there. Sorry. Councillor Jones again.
I mean, I don't know. I might have changed my mind about what I was going to say. I was just going to say that I think that perhaps it could be. I mean, because I think I don't know how representative we are of public opinion, but a lot of people here seem to be really against the idea. A lot of you seem to really identify with the idea of a grave being, a particularly sacred place, which I think that may be becoming a slightly less popular view, along with cremations being more common as well. And I just wonder then, if it's going to be devastating to some people for that to happen and other people don't mind, whether there could be a kind of in-between thing where it's almost like the descendants of people decide when they're buried, whether they want a permanent plot for their relatives or not. And then, the people who actually kind of, really value that idea would say yeah, and the people who don't actually really care about graves would say no, and that might be a kind of middle ground. Just an idea, but maybe it's stupid.
I think it's very valid. The last bit of my email I sent to Colin was basically round about that, saying there may be some merit in starting from now, and then you cannot have more than for 100 years. I recently paid money to Wimbledon Council for my grandfather, who's buried in a grave by himself in Gap Road Cemetery in Wimbledon. There's never going to be anybody else buried there, but I paid the money, so it was valid for another 50 years. But that's what they're doing. It's a commercial cemetery, or commercial as in public cemetery. So there may be something that we need to say to people now, you can have it for 100 years, but after that, when you're gone, and as Colin says, you've been and gone, something else happens then. Yes.
What I'm getting, Chair, is on this very simple thing that the majority of people here, and this is a perfectly good cross section of the community. This whole point of being councillors is that you are a cross section of the community. It sounds like the majority of voices would be against a proposal like this, and I can simply go back and say that if there was a vote at this town council, the vote would be against.
I don't know whether it's worthwhile just doing a straw poll with hands.
If you want to, you can do.
So all those in favour of the extinguishment of rights to burial for over 100 years, just put your hands up for me. 1, 2, 3. I don't know about, 4. Is that you as well, Laura? 4. All those against?
Yeah, that was me, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Okay, cool. That's good. That's great.
I don't know if there's any abstentions, just for interest.
And
Yeah.
so
There was a couple of abstentions, yeah.
There's nothing current happening. There's nothing local happening. As Councillor Roach said, it'll be in the local plan or anything like that. But it's useful. At least we know.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's good.
It's interesting. Well, it was muck me up if I was going around looking at gravestones in Exting like I do. So.
I thought you was going to be buried at sea, John.
Yeah.
If you could dig his grave, David.
Nice one. Right, item 12, to receive urgent correspondence, Colin. Nothing. Right, date of next meeting is obviously the time of the annual meeting, which is Tuesday the 4th of May, which we're going to be discussing in a minute. Okie dokie. Before we move on to the item 14, I'd just like to thank everybody for being kind to me for the last couple of years. Hopefully I've done a relatively good job. Whoever takes it on, I hope they have the same sort of support and from everybody. And I'd like to obviously thank Colin and Vicky and Alicia for all the work they do behind the scenes, as it were, on that. We're going to go on and discuss that meeting, and Colin's also got another thing to talk about, sustainability side of things. So, item 14, can I have a proposer to exclude the press and public, please? Councillor Marks, secondly Councillor Roach. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Colin, you're going to stop recordings.
Yep. So I'll stop the recording.